I didn't plan to humiliate my husband that night. I didn't even plan to speak. I just wanted to see his face when he saw me. Instead, he looked straight through me and laughed. Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Cole, and until that evening, I thought I knew the man I was married to. We'd been together 7 years. 5 of them married. Long enough to memorize the sound of his keys at the door, the way he drank his coffee too fast, the lie he told me every morning. It's just a work thing. You wouldn't enjoy it. The invitation came late. A last-minute corporate mixer at his firm. Spouses welcome, it said. He never mentioned it. I found the email accidentally while looking for a grocery receipt on our shared tablet. So I went. I wore a simple black dress. Nothing dramatic. Hair pinned back. Heels in my hand because my feet were already swollen from standing outside the building, staring up at the glowing logo of the company he gave everything to, except honesty. Inside, the office buzzed with laughter and champagne. I spotted him immediately. My husband. Confident. Relaxed. Surrounded by coworkers I'd heard stories about for years. I stepped toward him. He looked at me. And then he smiled politely. Like I was a stranger. Someone next to him joked, "Man, you don't even know her?" He chuckled. "Should I?" That's when a woman from HR frowned and said, softly but clearly, "Do you know she's your wife?" The room went silent. His smile vanished. I picked up my heels, turned around, and that was the moment I decided I would never beg him to recognize me again. I walked out before he could say my name. The elevator ride down felt longer than our entire marriage. My phone buzzed once. Twice. Then again. I didn't look. I already knew what the messages would say. "Where are you?" That was a misunderstanding. "You embarrassed me." Funny how embarrassment only mattered when it was his. By the time I reached home, my hands were steady. That scared me more than the anger. Calm always came before something broke. I met Evan when he was broke, ambitious, and insecure. I helped him practice presentations in our tiny apartment. I proofread resumes. I listened to him complain about coworkers who didn't respect him enough. Somewhere along the way, respect turned into performance. And quiet, supportive me, didn't fit the image he was selling anymore. That night made everything click. The late dinners. The networking weekends. The way he introduced me less and less at events, until eventually not at all. I wasn't his partner. I was his past. My phone rang again. This time, I answered. "Marissa," he said quickly, breathless. "Please come back upstairs. Let me explain." I stared at the wall and realized something terrifying. I didn't want an explanation. I wanted answers he didn't know I was already collecting. The next morning, Evan acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his briefcase, and said, "We'll talk tonight." Not "I'm sorry." Not "Are you okay?" Just a delay. A strategy. That's when I started paying attention. I checked the calendar he thought was private. Client dinners that ran too late. Weekend conferences that didn't exist online. A shared drive full of polished reports, with my formatting, my phrasing, my fingerprints still on them. He hadn't just erased me socially. He'd done it professionally, too. When I finally confronted him that evening, he sighed like I was exhausting. "You didn't belong there," he said. "That crowd wouldn't get you." I laughed once. Sharp. "You mean the crowd you married me before you impressed?" His jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic." That word. Dramatic. The favorite shield of men who rewrite history. I watched him closely as he spoke. How his eyes slid away when I mentioned the HR woman. How quickly he changed the subject when I asked why his colleagues didn't know I existed. He wasn't ashamed. He was afraid. And that's when I realized this wasn't about a marriage falling apart. It was about a man building a life that didn't include me, and hoping I'd stay quiet long enough to let him finish. The viral moment didn't come from his office. It came 3 days later, at the annual leadership dinner. This time, Evan invited me. "Come with me," he said carefully. "It'll look good." That word again. Look. The ballroom was packed. Executives. Investors. Spouses dressed like quiet trophies. Evan held my hand just long enough for people to see it, then let go the second we reached his table. Midway through dinner, his boss stood to give a speech.
Praise.
Numbers.
Growth.
Then he smiled and said, and none of this would have been possible without the strategic insight behind Evan's last 2 projects. My chest tightened. Marissa, his boss continued, scanning the room. You're here, right? The consultant who helped shape them. Heads turned. Evan froze. I felt it then, the shift. The sudden attention. The way people looked at me differently. I stood slowly. Yes, I said. I'm his wife. The silence was deafening. Evan didn't look at me. He stared at the table like it might save him. And in that moment, surrounded by the life he tried to erase me from, I realized I finally had witnesses. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed while Evan paced the room, apologizing in fragments. I didn't think they'd bring it up, he said. You didn't have to say it like that. Like what? The truth? Pain came later. Quiet. Heavy. The kind that settles into your bones. I let it stay for exactly 1 night. By morning, I was calm. I reviewed emails. Contracts. The consulting agreement Evan insisted stay informal, between us. No paperwork. No credit. Just trust. I'd built his professional voice while slowly erasing my own. So I rebuilt strategically. I contacted a former colleague, updated my portfolio, registered my consultancy under my maiden name. Quiet moves. Clean moves. When Evan asked what I was doing, I smiled. Catching up. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I let him think the storm had passed. That was the mistake people always made. Revenge didn't need chaos. It needed timing. And while Evan slept beside me, confident again, I drafted a single email, one that would legally, publicly, and permanently put my name back where he'd stolen it from. I scheduled it. Then I turned off my phone. The email went out at 9 a.m. sharp. Recipients: Evan's boss, HR, legal, 3 senior partners, and 1 investor who cared deeply about intellectual ownership. Subject line: clarification of authorship and compensation. I watched Evan read it from across the kitchen. His coffee froze halfway to his mouth. The email was calm, professional. Attached were drafts, timestamps, tracked changes, years of proof. Every strategy memo. Every presentation outline. Every line he'd rehearsed in the mirror that started as my words. I can explain, he stammered, grabbing his phone. Too late. His boss replied first. We need to discuss this immediately. Then HR. Then legal. Evan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. His hands shook. Mine didn't. What did you do? He whispered. I met his eyes. I told the truth. The same one you laughed about. By noon, he was suspended pending review. By evening, the firm announced an internal audit. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and waited for the fallout to finish landing. Evan came home late, hollowed out. No briefcase. No confidence. Just a man who finally understood what silence costs. They're freezing my accounts, he said, voice cracking. They think I misrepresented my role. They're talking about termination. I nodded. Not cruel. Not kind. Just present. He tried anger next. You could have handled this privately. I looked at him. Like you handled me? That shut him up. Over the next week, his name disappeared from internal emails. Meetings he once led were reassigned. People stopped calling. The investor withdrew. Quietly. Professionally. The same way I'd been erased. One night, he asked, Is this revenge? I thought about it. No, I said. This is correction. I moved into the guest room. Then I met with a lawyer. Then a mediator. By the time Evan realized this wasn't a phase, I was already gone in every way that mattered. And still, he hadn't hit bottom yet. The final twist came quietly. Evan wasn't fired. He was demoted. Publicly. The firm issued a statement praising ethical accountability and reassigned him to a junior role under someone he used to mentor. His reputation stayed intact enough to hurt, broken just enough to remember. My consultancy launched the same week. First client, his firm's biggest competitor. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I packed my things, signed the divorce papers, and changed my last name back without ceremony. Months later, I ran into him at a cafe. He didn't laugh this time. He looked at me like a stranger, careful, uncertain, respectful. "Do they know who you are?" he asked. I smiled.
They always did, I said.
"You just forgot." I walked out in my heels, not because I was angry, but because I finally recognized myself again.